So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
Say, I'm upstairs in the bathroom, my wife's downstairs making me breakfast, right? It's a fantasy, Let's pretend women still cook for their men.
Good morning. It's Thursday, April the 17th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and the conclusion of the Boys of Winter. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now the headlines for Thursday, April the 17th. Maine sues to allow Sasquatch to continue competing in women's sports. Representative Corey Mills calls out Senator Van Hollen after his trip to El Salvador today. Quote, "Why don't you try to focus on safety of Americans?" Breaking, the U.S. Border Patrol Chief Mike Banks said morale is through the roof and they are actually able to do their jobs. Twice as many credit cards are issued and active than the total number of government employees. U.S. President Donald Trump calls Jesus the living Son of God while reflecting on his incarnation and crucifixion. President Donald Trump and 5 members of his administration have been named to Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people of 2025. And those are the headlines for Thursday, April the 17th. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the political corner.
Let's talk about Trump voters and how they feel. Do they regret their vote?
I mean, this is the big question, right? I hear all these stories, all these articles. All the Trump voters, they regret what they did back in 2024. I'm here to tell you, very few of them regret what they did back in 2024. What are we talking about? Trump voters looking back at 2024. We got a new poll out. The poll was conducted this month. What percentage would change their vote to a different candidate? We're talking just 2%, just 2%. That's not even a wide spot on the road. And then there's this additional 1% who say they would rather not vote. We're talking overall under 5% might or would have changed their vote, Donald Trump voters back in 2024. And then you ask, okay, the same question to Kamala Harris voters, and it turns out the numbers are rather similar. So if there was a repeat, if folks got to be able to redo their vote that they had back in 2024, would the result be any different? I doubt it would be. I doubt it would be, or it would still be extremely close. The bottom line is, for all this talk of Trump voters regretting their vote, in the numbers, it really just doesn't show up.
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the patriotic short.
What happens when pirates attack 2 U.S. Navy warships? In March 2006, while patrolling off the Somali coast, the USS Gonzales spotted a suspicious vessel. It was a large dhow towing 2 smaller skiffs, a tactic used by pirates. The crew on the Gonzales started tracking the vessel and called for backup from the USS Cape St. George. The 2 U.S. Navy warships shadowed the suspected pirates and prepared for a boarding operation. But as the Navy's boarding teams approached in small boats, the pirates suddenly opened fire with rocket-propelled grenades. The sailors immediately returned fire, whilst gunners aboard the warships provided covering fire to protect them. However, this is when the pirates realized they had made a mistake. Both warships responded with overwhelming force. The Gonzales targeted the dhow, while the Cape St. George engaged the skiffs. A round from the Gonzales hit a fuel drum, igniting a fire that forced the pirates to abandon ship. And since they had no chance, the surviving pirates surrendered.
Thank you. And now, a little bit of motivation.
Success is not a loud event. It's the work you do in the dark, when it's quiet, when nobody's watching, when there's no crowds, no one cheering you on. It's just you, working on your craft. And in order to become the best version of you, in order to reach heights you have never reached, you got to put forth as much energy and as much effort as humanly possible.
It's like that quiet walk to the gym, like footsteps, some empty-ass gym late at night, over and over and over. Whereas I sit there studying other great people and then comparing it with what I'm doing and looking at it. over and over and over. Doing 20 minutes of quiet meditation a day, over and over and over, is a very quiet process. It's not this big rah-rah speech where you do this one thing and something big happens.
We look at the best of the best, and what we think is these people were gifted, and that's the myth that society and the media sells to us. Actually, what made the great ones was what they did every day, their daily routines.
Habits are the building blocks of our lives, not the goals or the grand schemes or the vision or the big idea. It's what you do every single day that matters more than anything. Just focus on getting the job done every single day, whether you feel like it or not.
What I do is I focus on maybe 1 or 2 or 3 things at a time, and then I just do it. And then I get that done, and then I do the next thing. And then I get that done, and then I do the next thing.
I'm not the strongest. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the smartest. But I will work hard. I will be up when my competitors are asleep. I will be up when my enemy is curled up in bed. I will be up getting after it.
You gotta get over your mind going, I can't do this, it's too hard and all that stuff. You gotta push yourself through when you feel exhausted and say, there's a second win in me, I'm gonna find it. But if you find yourself saying, I can't do something, I don't want to do something, but you know if you made yourself do it, you're gonna be a better human being, then you must do it. Don't hesitate, do it immediately. Some people say, well, that's not a very safe life. That's not a very secure life. If you want security, go to prison. If you want freedom, this is how you live.
Average people won't understand you. They don't get it and never will. The sheep will never understand the mentality of winners. Why are you so antisocial? Because I'm trying to get it. Every time I text you and invite you to go do something fun and cool, you always studying because I'm trying to get it.
If you want to win, folks, you got to stand up and you got to say, I'm so sick and tired of being average and ordinary.
If you make that shift, I'm going to win. We're going to play to win now. We're not playing to play. We're not playing to see how we do. Once you start getting some winning, you start changing. You talk different, you walk different. All of a sudden, this isn't the same damn human being. You can change you. You'd be surprised what a little winning would do. You'd be surprised how good you'd be if you just decide to win. Be number 1 in your office, number 1 in your region.
The winners, they do whatever it takes to get the job done. They do it and do it and do it and do it until the job gets done. If you want to become somebody, do it. If you want to become financially independent, do it. Almost everybody can stay excited for 2 or 3 months. A few people can stay excited for 2 or 3 years. But a winner stay excited forever.
The difference between winning and losing in life and everything, and being a great leader and not, wealthy and not, a big business and not, making a difference and not, is so small. What's the separator? They do exactly what everybody else does and one more. When they make 10 contacts a day in their business, they make the 10, they make one more. They read 1 book a month, they read 1 more. They do 30 minutes on the treadmill, no, they do 30 plus 1 more. They do 10 reps on the bench press, no, 10 reps, 1 more. When you set that standard, your entire life begins to shift and change.
You have to go the extra mile. You have to go all in. You have to quit leaving things up to chance. Real winners, they do every fucking thing that they possibly can, that they are in control of every single time, every single day, for a long, long, long time to win. They understand the last 20% is what separates them from everybody else. It's what separates you from where you want to be.
We're tired of this 60% you. We're tired of this complaining you. We're tired of this version. Greatness is in you. You are here. You owe you an explanation. You need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, why are you only giving 50%? What's wrong with you? You here. Leave your doggone mark. So whatever you got to do, you do it. I ain't about to miss this opportunity. I'm about to give everything I've got. And I will know if I don't get another gig, it won't have anything to do with the fact that I didn't put everything on the field. I need effort from you. I need you to match whatever effort the enemy is putting up. Whoever your enemy is, match the doggone effort. Every day I feel like driving in a nice car. Every day I feel like flying first class. Every single day of my life, I feel like giving 120. Every single day. I don't have days where I don't feel like it. Why? Because I'm counting on me. My wife counting on me. My son's counting on me. I don't have days to waste because I value myself enough to give 120% or don't do it. Because I execute. Why? Because when you get results, you get rewards.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Thank you. Now a little bit of meditation. That was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now the Daily Stoic.
Only fools rush in. A good person is invincible, for they don't rush into contests in which they aren't the strongest. If you want their property, take it. Take also their staff, profession, and body. But you will never compel what they set out for, nor trap them in what they would avoid. For the only contest the good person enters is that of their own reasoned choice. How can such a person not be invincible? Epictetus, Discourses, 3.6.5 through 7. One of the most fundamental principles of martial arts is that strength should not go against strength. That is, don't try to beat your opponent where they are strongest. But that's exactly what we do when we try to undertake some impossible task we haven't bothered to think through. Or we let someone put us on the spot. Or we say yes to everything that comes our way. Some people think that choosing your battles is weak or calculating. How could reducing the amount of times we fail or minimizing the number of needless injuries inflicted upon us be weak? How is that a bad thing? As the saying goes, discretion is the better part of valor. The Stoics call it reasoned choice. That means be reasonable. Think hard before choosing, and make yourself unbeatable.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, The Exorcist.
One of the things that demons do is that they attack the institution of marriage. The reason that we want to observe that they attack marriage is in order to harm and damage the children, because they know if they can harm them or damage them in relationship to the marriage of the parents, that when they're young, then they will have a greater opportunity to possibly control them in the future. In other words, when people are wounded or damaged, that is, because that's what wound is. Wound is a kind of damage on the skin, etc. But it's the same thing true in relationship to psychology. Demons know that if you can wound a person when they're young, their psychological faculties don't function in a normal way. And as a result of that, they're more easily controllable and manipulatable. Sin, trauma, abuse on the side of parents and others is the way in which children are formed in the minds of the demon to be susceptible to doing whatever they want them to do. In other words, you just weaken them, and then that way you can just control them.
And that was The Exorcist. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, would you be willing and able to act on the belief that altruism is a moral ideal, that you must sacrifice everything you love, seek, own, or desire, including your life, for the benefit of any and every stranger? Unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter Philosophical Detection from the book Philosophy, Who Needs It? Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, gaslighting.
We have a quarter of all university students in Britain who now say they self-censor in universities and lectures because they are scared of saying what they really think. We've had prominent academics like Kathleen Stock essentially chased out of their jobs by militant, radical, progressive academics, administrators, vice-chancellors. And so I think universities have essentially given up on the founding idea that they're here to search for truth, that they're here to expose students to a wide range of ideas. And I do think they've morphed into highly political projects.
And that was a little bit of gaslighting. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we've got a little bit of Maria and then Stu.
when everything hinges on the latest trade headline. So what I think investors should be doing is just kind of mute out the day-to-day noise and focus on what you think are going to be the best secular growth themes over the next 3 to 5 years and beyond. And when you see those companies sell off, grab them at a discount.
Well, I mean, look, there has been some buying opportunities, but then there's also been a lot of volatility. Mark Tepper and Mahat Cook, thank you both. Tune in tomorrow for Maria's exclusive interview with Eli Lilly and Company Chairman and CEO Dave Ricks. Varney and Company is up next. Stuart Varney, good morning.
Good morning, Cheryl, and good morning, everyone. Tariffs and trade, can't get away from it, dominate the news. Here is the latest. The president personally conducted negotiations with a delegation from Japan. He says, we're making big progress, his words. In a Truth Social post, he also said he had a very productive call with the president of Mexico. Later this morning, he'll meet with Italy's leader. It's the first meeting with a top official from an EU country. So we have Asia, Europe, and Mexico talking deals. Looks like the objective is to isolate China, bring the rest of the world into a series of deals, leaving China alone. Wednesday, the market was responding to Fed Chair Powell, who worries publicly about the inflationary impact of tariffs. That sent stocks down. And the Dow is down a lot more this morning. We'll explain that in a moment. It's off 490 points. But we've got green for the S&P and green for the NASDAQ, up 128. All right, here we go. What happened to the Dow this morning? United Health. It is a Dow stock. It's down, 20% is that? 17% now, taking 720 points off the Dow. So without United Health, the Dow would be in the green. United Health concerned about the rising cost of medical care in the future. Going the other way, Eli Lilly, up sharply. They have a daily obesity pill which works just as well as an injection. That stock is up 11.7%. Bitcoin, quoted in the mid-$80,000 range, 84.7. Not much change for interest rates. The 10-year, 4.29. The 2-year, right about 3.79. Oil moving up this morning. You've got $63 a barrel. That's the quote. And gas holding at 3.16. Diesel coming in at 3.58. Right. On the show today, Trump goes after the Fed. He says Powell has been too late and wrong about rates. He says they should lower rates now. And Powell's termination, he says, could not come fast enough. Senator Chris Van Hollen was not allowed into the tough El Salvador prison. He went down there to bring back Abrego Garcia, the deported alleged MS-13 gang member. Turns out Garcia, when he was illegally in America, was accused of beating his wife twice, was caught in Tennessee human trafficking, and was identified as a gang member by 2 judges. And the senator wants to bring him home to Maryland. And this is Holy Week. Trump is leading the faithful with a very Christian message, and you'll hear it. Today is known as Maundy Thursday. Do you know that? The day when Jesus celebrated his final Passover with his disciples. April 17th, 2025, Varney and Company is about to begin.
And that was Stuart Varney, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing, mean? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, if you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. So the left is gaslighting us again, and they're doing it in the form of projection. They say that there's a whole bunch of Trump voters that regret their votes, and they are, again, gaslighting us, and they're doing it through projection. They make it sound as though this is a statement of fact, when in reality, it is their hope or wish that they're stating. I'm not going to be fooled by this. You shouldn't either. Back in a minute. Thank you. And so about deportations, there was the guy that got deported recently, excuse me, from Maryland to El Salvador. And what the left is doing is referring to this guy as the man from Maryland. We cannot win an argument if we refer to this guy as the man from Maryland. We have to frame the argument appropriately, and that means to refer to him as the man from El Salvador. He's not a citizen. He's not from Maryland. He is from El Salvador. And so remember that. You've got to frame the argument correctly if you want to win. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Stuart Barney's My Take.
The Beach Boys. You know, there's something special about the Beach Boys. They got that sound. Makes me think of summer in Southern California. I don't know why. All right, good morning, everyone. It is...
You don't know why? It's the Beach Boys.
It's evocative, isn't it?
Yes.
Morning, everyone. 10 o'clock Eastern. Look at this. Dow's down 400, explainable. The S&P and the Nasdaq, narrow gains. Now, here's the problem with the Dow. United Health shaving 745 points off the Dow. That stock is a Dow stock, and it's down 19%. Look at the 10-year Treasury yield, moving up a little bit this morning to 4.29%. The price of oil is moving up a bit, $63 a barrel now. And Bitcoin, not that much change. You're looking at 84.3 as the price. That is the markets. And now this. It is Holy Week, and our president is putting Christianity front and center. He is presenting a very Christian message. It's not watered down with platitudes, and it's certainly not like Biden's celebration of Easter, which included paying homage to the trans community last year. Trump's Palm Sunday message was overtly Christian. It used Christian language. Quote, "Join in prayer with Christians celebrating the crucifixion and resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the living Son of God who conquered death, freed us from sin, and unlocked the gates of heaven for all of humanity." Reading that, you feel like you're in church. Last night, at a prayer service, the president said, "We will not forget the true source of our joy and strength. America has put our trust in God." He says it will never change. In God we trust. Of his own faith, he simply says, "I was saved."
Jesus had defeated darkness and death and promised new life to all of humankind. And that's what we celebrate each year at Easter as we joyfully proclaim on Sunday, He is risen. Millions of Americans have been moved by Christ's example to heal the sick, defend their families, lift up their communities, and make our country stronger, better, and greater than ever before. With God's grace over these past 3 months, and we have had a great 3 months. They say maybe the best 3 months ever for a president.
I guess he couldn't resist a little politics there. Now, when you see the president on television, and he's on a lot, he doesn't come across as an intensely religious person. He's not holier than thou, he's not a monk, and he's not preachy either. But he is bringing the Christian message to our country in a very effective way. He is defending Christianity with the creation of the White House Faith Office. He's established a Justice Department task force to root out anti-Christian bias. Now, the elites and their media allies put out a secular humanist message. Trump goes the other way. He's a Christian. And this Holy Week, he is leading the faithful with a very direct, very Christian message. As with so many things, Trump is just different. Second hour of Varney, just getting started.
And that was good old Stu. Nonprofit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the last part of The Boys of Winter.
Afterward. At exactly 26 minutes after 7 on the evening of February 22nd, 2005, on the shores of Mirror Lake, history repeated itself. It was 20 degrees and snowing in Lake Placid. The flakes were the size of quarters. On a makeshift jumbotron by the lake, a few rink lengths from the Olympic Fieldhouse, several hundred people were watching a replay of the closing minutes of the game between the United States and the Soviet Union. The tape was queued up so it would end at the precise time the original game did, an idea that came from Sandy Caligiuri, an official with the Olympic Regional Development Authority. Why not celebrate the 25th anniversary at the moment it happened? Caligiuri asked. When the clock reached the 1-minute mark, you could feel a surge of excitement go through the crowd. On the screen, Mark Johnson was digging the puck out along the boards, nudging it into center ice. The clock hit 10 seconds, and then 5, and then 1, and then came the horn and delirium, and the people who had gathered on the Mirror Lake ice began to chant, "USA! USA!" a robust recreation of the chant made famous a quarter-century before. Behind the people, near the center of the lake, fireworks shot up into the snowy sky. On a stage erected for the occasion, 6 members of the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team watched themselves and 13 teammates dive into a pile on top of Jim Craig, and then skate around and try to find a way to express the greatest feeling they had ever had. The players were Steve Kristoff, Neil Broughton, Mike Eruzione, Mike Ramsey, Dave Christian, and Dave Silk, and they were standing in the very spot where all the Olympic medal ceremonies but one were held in 1980. The only exception was the sport of hockey, which had its medals distributed in the Fieldhouse, for good reason. There was no way you were going to fit 10,000 people down on the lake, as one official put it. The replay of the U.S.-Soviet game was part of an 11-day commemoration of the Lake Placid Olympics. It began on February 12th, when Jim Craig relit the Olympic torch, and culminated on the night of February 23rd, with a gala and the renaming of the Olympic Fieldhouse in honor of Herbert Paul Brooks. It was his vision, it was his commitment that helped lead the way for the miracle on ice to occur, New York Governor George Pataki said. Brooks's wife Patty was there, and so were his son Dan and their daughter Kelly Paradise. 18 months after Herb's death, Patty Brooks was overcome with emotion during the ceremony. In a quiet moment afterward, she smiled and said, "Herbie would have hated this. He never wanted any fuss made over him. It just wasn't the way he was." And Mark Johnson, the team's star center, agreed. He never enjoyed those types of banquets and festivals and whatnot. He was a hockey coach, Johnson said. The newly christened Herb Brooks Arena is a North Country mecca for people who visit Lake Placid, whether they are Pee-wee hockey players or senior citizen tourists. You walk along Main Street, and it's almost as if you are at the end of a ski tow, getting tugged toward the top of the hill and the white, flat-topped building that sits just beyond it. For most of us, the tug is constructed not just of the history that went on there, but of an appreciation of the faith and commitment and love that underpinned the history. It's perilously easy to look back on the final result of those games and to sanitize the process that got the players there. To do that, though, is to rob them of the full measure of their triumph. This was a team that had to overcome doubts and fears and defeats, along with a deep distaste for a coach who seemed impossibly hard at times. It was a team that could have emotionally crumbled after the 10-3 drubbing in Madison Square Garden 4 days before the games began, that could easily have taken the ice on February 22nd, not with the burning eyes that Sergei Makarov so eloquently spoke of, but with eyes that were cold and cowering. These players had a staggering run of good fortune in the Olympics, but they had an even greater run of resilience, a capacity to overcome pain and uncertainty. 3 years after I started working on this book, amid unsettling thoughts that people might think they know all they need to know about the game, my favorite moments along the way remain the times when I felt I'd gotten insight into the sources of this resilience. I see Neil Broughton skating on a flooded rink that his father got up at 2 a.m. to make in 25 degrees below zero weather. I see a young Steve Janisak making saves by the lights of his father's Rambler, and hear Mary Harrington telling her son John, who was constantly trying to prove he was good enough, that perseverance is everything in life. I see Mary's late husband, Charles, skipping overtime at work to watch his kids' games, because his overtime would always be there, but the games would not, and see him listening to John skate against the Russians from the cab of his locomotive. I envision Margaret Craig running her goaltender son and all her other kids all over southeastern Massachusetts, a devotion that was absolutely unstinting until her cigarette habit caught up to her and cancer arrived. Behind every player, there were stories of love and sacrifice and struggle, of human beings being human, be it Mark Wells rebuilding a life that was once reduced to painkiller addiction and goose feeding, or Mark Pavlich finding his way after a tragic death in the woods. Life is hard, and Olympic gold medals provide no exemption. You push on, do your best, and if you are really brave, you dream big. Doubts and fears be damned. This is the stuff that miracles are made of, and the proof was there to see on February 22nd, 1980.
And that was the end of The Boys of Winter, the untold story of a coach, a dream, and the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team, by Wayne Coffey and read by Kirby Hayborn. Back in a minute. Thank you, and this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that rights are not collective. They are joint and several.